we are back on the build phase live stream, trying to make these a little bit better each week as we go along. But today we have some, probably the final spoilers, I imagine, from the Omega level set, unless they break from tradition and reveal all the cards from the Omega level expansion. I think this is probably going to be the, oh no, it says right here, third and final issue in the well, no, this says never mind. So I'm reading this in real time, as I do when I react to the videos. Oh, I should make sure my sound is working. Yep, sound is working. Okay, so what this says here is that this is the third preview for the Omegas, which is the third and final issue in the Omega level arc. It doesn't necessarily say that this is the Shadow King. What? So this comes out on October 14th. So I don't think we should anticipate another spoiler article. And while we probably haven't seen all the cards in this expansion, it does stand to reason that there'll be a few left in the box, which is what they do typically. So let's get to the actual cards. Here we go. So I think these are all going to have the Omega level mutant trait, which again means you can only have one named. Does it specify title or does it specify name? Let's see. Other names. Yeah. So you can only have one Omega level mutant in your deck of a given name. So the Jean Grey main character can play the Jean Grey supporting character, but not any other ones. So let's get to these guys. Elixir. I really like this art. This is cool. Again, these little black marks annoy the hell out of me. I'll try not to mention that ever again, since this is the last spoiler. I won't need to. Whoa, what are these stats? What? I guess neither good nor evil. Okay, so there wasn't anything else there that we haven't already seen. This team is neither good nor evil. And so far, all of them have only been Omega level, with the exception of Franklin Richards, who came in a different box. So this guy is a 0/1/1. That is atrocious. So hopefully his power makes up for that. When you recruit Elixir, and at the start of your turn, choose one. KO an enemy supporting character, or put a supporting character from your KO pile onto your side. So you play him on turn 8, and you get whatever the best thing your opponent has killed out of your KO pile. Ooh. Now this could be an interesting way to get something, like if you use Cypher or some other kind of discard effect to put something big and scary in your KO pile, you could fish it back out. Now, I don't remember I think Galactus can only appear by being recruited, so it would make it impossible for you to get Galactus out, and Dark Phoenix's power doesn't trigger unless she's recruited. So the two biggest bomb cards that immediately jump to mind, I'm not sure you would even be able to play. Yeah, Galactus can only appear when he's recruited. Now, if you wipe that keyword off of him, you of course wipe the keyword off of Elixir as well. But it lets you KO, so you play him, you kill your enemy's biggest guy, and then so if you have a board and you can protect this guy, and you don't just have to protect him against attacks, you have to protect him against -1 counters, against out-of-combat stun effects. He's pretty fragile. A 1 defense and 1 health sucks pretty bad. But if you can get set up and you build your deck around setting up for this guy, then his effect is good. Is it good enough to make up for this atrocious body? Man, I do not know, but my initial reaction is probably no. Now, he does, let's say early in the game, I have Cypher, and I'm able to, play Fing Fang Foom or something, and get that into the KO pile, like a big, or Gilgamesh, Sentry, any of these big bomb characters, I get into my KO pile early. Then I'm able to play this guy on turn 8, I get another 8-drop back, and now I have this kind of cloud effect. But oof, he seems so fragile. It feels like there's a lot of ways that characters would be able to get to him, whether it's stealth, flight, -1 counters, I'm not sure what kind of out of combat stuns would necessarily get to him, but I mean, even something like the world is a madhouse. Boom, he dies as soon as he appears. Now, this recruit effect would still go off. Since it's a recruit effect, it's going to proc before the appear. So any interactivity, you're going to at least get to kill one big thing or get one big thing out of your KO pile. I feel like you don't necessarily play this guy for the kill effect, though. Like, I would rather, if all I want to do is clear a big threat off my opponent's turn, I would rather play Jean Grey, who, while still has a bad body for an 8-drop, has a much better body than this guy, or play Magneto and use a Serpent Crown effect with his ability to seek out equipment and steal my opponent's biggest guy. So I think the deck Elixir is going to want to go into is going to be a deck where you build it around the idea of having impactful stuff in your KO pile through some kind of means early game, and then when you play him, you get a actual, you're not really paying 8 recruit points for this guy necessarily. You're getting that effect online, but then you're getting something else out there like Gilgamesh that could sit in front of him and defend him. And then that's the way you want to set your board up. If all you're doing is trying to kill an enemy supporting character, I think there's better ways of doing that than this specific guy. But if you have a board that, like, if you build your deck around protecting this guy and having this guy out and making him durable and keeping him in play, then having the ability to either win more with more stuff on the board, or protect your position if you took a hit during your opponent's turn, or damage your opponent's position, that all seems pretty decent. Would I rather kill your guy or steal your guy? I'd probably rather steal your guy. So I'm not sure immediately what deck this guy goes into. And what's he doing with his hands? It's like he's throwing like double uppercuts with terrible form, like face punching himself, terrible form. I do really like the look of this art, even if I'm not totally sure what's happening with his arms here. The background looks really cool. Like, it looks impactful. It looks like something's happening, as opposed to like the first week we saw Hope and she's just kind of standing in, what's that thing they called it in the Matrix, the white room, the construct, I think. I don't know. It's been a while since I watched those movies. Next up, we have Vulcan. Kind of a different take on the art here. This has like an Alex Rossi kind of painting vibe to it, but looks very good. Maybe the first card out of all of these where the black inserts that I said I wasn't going to mention again don't look bad because there's a black background here. OLM Accord. Oh, what is with these stats? So flight and range, cool. 3/3/2 on an 8-drop. So what's his power do? Hopefully it counteracts these atrocious stats. When Vulcan enters combat with an enemy character with a superpower, he gains +1 counters equal to that character's attack. I don't think that's very good. So there's a condition that you have to meet. The character has to have a superpower. And if at some point in the game Dark Phoenix comes down and calls superpowers, this dude is just a 3/3, which is atrocious for an 8-drop. And he gains +1 counters equal to that character's attack. Now, previous cards that we've seen, like Hulkbuster Iron Man out of the Shield set, that have the ability to gain counters equal to an opposing stat, you don't really care about gaining counters equal to your opposing character's attack. You want counters equal to their defense. Now, this does say he doesn't gain okay, so I misread that a little bit there. I initially read that as he gains counters that bring his attack equal to the opposing character's attack, but that's not what this says. This says he gains counters equal to the attack. So if he attacks a 9-drop, or a 9 attack character rather, he's going to get 9 counters, which is going to bring him up to 12. So that does offset the issue of, hey, I'm attacking into this guy, but his attack and defense aren't equal. Because gaining, if a guy's a like 4/5 and you gain attack equal to his attack, that sucks. But you're not going to do that. You're going to gain counters equal to the attack. So you're going to be whatever that character's attack is +3. So even a character that has an attack defense imbalance, that works out pretty well. Like this guy going into, well, I was going to say Cersei, but she doesn't have a superpower, so that's a bad example. This is maybe one of the first ones of these that I really don't think has a home anywhere. I think this guy might just be bad. Probably there's some niche deck that really wants to generate the most +1 counters possible. And this guy could potentially, I mean, attacking into, does it say supporting character? Enemy character. So you could attack into like a Human Torch who's been stacking counters for 8 turns of the game that could be, really big, like a 17 attack or something. So then he becomes a 20/20. That's pretty cool. So maybe I was a little too harsh 15 seconds ago. Maybe there is a slot for him in metas where you're worried about the opposing player having really huge characters. But even like if he attacks into Galactus, this does nothing because Galactus doesn't have any superpowers. He only has keywords. So you're going to need a meta where there's characters that get big. I guess they don't necessarily have to get big. Gosh. So you're going to put him in a deck where you are really reliant on generating the most +1 counters on the board possible. Like if you have some kind of like Megan Flint shenanigans or something to that effect where you really care a lot about +1 counters, or you're going to play him as a counter pick in a meta where there are lots of characters with superpowers. Ooh, he could be really good against Groot, actually. So maybe the way to think about this is what kind of main characters are going to be in play. And then he can go into a main character and get as big as they are +3. And that could be extremely useful. Now, this does trigger at the entering of combat. So if somebody has a combat trick or like an even the odds, I'm going to play my 8-drop. I'm going to attack. I'm going to become a 33 going into something and then back down to a 3/3. That could be disgusting. So maybe there's some niche applications for this guy, but this is not a card that you just throw into a deck, I don't think. And you got to play this guy with intent as far as I'm concerned. Exodus, again, really cool looking art. I think the art got better week to week. I think the initial artwork with like Jean Grey and Hope looked kind of weak compared to the strength of the art here in this final arc of previews. And all these full arts, I mean, none of them look bad. I'm just, as a comic book fan, not a huge fan of background deficient artwork where it's just like the character in a white void. Not so much into that. Works for John Oliver, not so much for comic books. So this guy's an 8 cost, of course, OLM, flight range, 9/6/1. They've done some really weird things with stat blocks on these 8-drops. Wow, this is small print. Psionic of the highest order. So don't confuse him with a run-of-the-mill psionic. He is better than a run-of-the-mill psionic. He's of the highest order. At the end of each enemy draw phase, that player discards a random card. That sucks. Although, so there's a bunch of effects here, and they all trigger at different points during your enemy's turn, it looks like. So I'm just going to go through these one at a time and then try to react to the card as a whole. But at the end of the draw phase, they discard a random card. So generally late in the game, your opponent's hand is going to be, it's going to be less of a target-rich environment than it would be at the beginning of the game. However, the trigger point for this is right at the end of the draw. So if I'm in top deck mode and I'm drawing 2 cards, I have to throw one of them away. And now I'm down to 1 card, which means I can either place a resource or I can play something. That could be crushing. If your opponent's in top deck mode, that power is extremely good. At the end of each enemy recovery phase, exhaust an enemy character on that side. So everybody readies. Man, I almost need to look up a turn order diagram to fully process how this card functions. So everybody readies, and then after they ready, you get to turn a guy tired again. That's also pretty good, and given his slot in your curve, he's going to come down turn 8. That means if it's been a game with some parity, your opponent's board probably isn't too stacked. So being able to take away whatever their best attacker is, that's kind of reminiscent of old verses in a way. Trying to chip away at their board in that way. That's also a pretty good power. the more guys they have, the less devastating it's going to be, but it's not random. You get to pick. So whoever their best guy is, you get to exhaust them. That's pretty cool. At the end of each enemy build phase, turn an enemy location face down. Ooh. So before they go into main phase, they lose a location. So now you've got somebody whose hand is being chipped away. They're only functionally drawing one card a turn. And they have to decide, am I going to play this location face up and then lose it immediately? Unless they have a build phase power to out to that. Otherwise, do I hold this location in my hand and then hope that I can chuck it to pay for a power from hand, which is going to deplete the hand even more, which is going to make the draw phase power even better, which creates pressure on their ability to maintain board state, which makes the recovery phase power that much better. This seems like a powerful index of powers that once they all start working. Now, he does only have one health, so you got to keep this guy in play. But you're going to get all of this at least once. All this that I've read so far is going to happen before your opponent even has the ability to deal with your guy. And this guy does dodge Mutant Control Act, because Mutant Control Act only works until end of turn. So I play my Exodus, you try to stop it with Mutant Control Act, you just wasted a card. Because end of my turn, all this is back online. So the last power here, at the end of each enemy main phase, put 3 -1 counters on an enemy character on that side. That's unnecessary. That's, sure. Okay. I mean, it's not bad. It's a free Thunderbolt every turn. Thor has to pay for this. The God of Thunder has to pay for this effect. This dude just has to survive a main phase. So you could hide him in the back row. Now, his 6 defense does make him awfully squishy. And after dealing with this effect once, I don't think your opponent's going to want to deal with it again. So if they can't kill you that turn, if they can't end the game by putting a wound on your main character, this is a kill on sight character. But he comes down and does so much valuable stuff before, like, so you're taking away an attack, you're taking away the ability to pay for a superpower, and you're taking a card out of their hand. All of that before they even get a chance to respond. And then if they can't punch through and actually hit this guy on their turn, you get to shrink a dude or kill something if they only have 3 health. That seems pretty good, man. All of this seems pretty good. I do not love this body. I think this body is super weak, but I kind of understand why they would make him that weak, given how potent this suite of powers is. This guy, I think this guy's going to see play. Like, competitively see play. Whoa! This might be my favorite artwork out of all of them. That looks badass. And it's got a black background for reasons that I won't specify. Oh, wait, but he's a 0/0. So the trade-off for having awesome artwork is that your stat block is a 0/0. Possession. If Proteus would be recruited, remove him from the game instead. Okay, now this is a waste. How can you make a card look this cool and then just RFG it? When he's removed this way, choose a face-up character on your side to be his host until it leaves play or gets stunned. Sure, okay. Reality Warping. Proteus' host gets +10/+10 range and has pay blue and heal a wound from this character. That's pretty good. Does it say that it has to be a supporting character? Choose a face-up character on your side. So you can host this guy to your main character, give your main character +10/+10 range and the ability to heal. That's awesome. That's really good. Is it worth sacrificing a body for? So let's say we go into turn 8. We're at a fairly equal board state. I play this guy. So instead of having an extra attack, I just get my main character beefed up. I can heal a wound off of him. And then... So he's basically like an 8-cost equipment. That's what this guy is. He's an 8-cost equipment. He does have a really strong effect. But does that do enough on turn 8? Now, if it's... We both have fairly anemic board states or fairly equal board states, it seems pretty good. But if you're behind, I mean, if you're behind, healing a wound is still good, but is 10/10 going to be enough to keep you alive? Like, how many times are you going to be able to heal that wound? Are you willing to pay 8 recruit points and a laboratory resource just to heal 1 wound? Probably not. So there are definitely going to be games where this dude does not do enough for the slot. But if you build your deck knowing that on turn 8, your main character is going to get this adrenaline shot and be able to wipe a wound off, I could see this slotting into Groot right now, to be honest. I were this card available, I'd probably slot it right into a Groot list. Be good in Adam Warlock. Be good probably any deck that plans on taking a beating early. Having some healing is good, and making your guy bigger and harder to deal with is good. Then they play Vulcan. Oh no. Man, 8 costs for an equipment. If this effect was like permanent, that'd be one thing. But I bet if it was permanently attached to the character, like the burn modifier, then they would specify supporting character. They would not let you attach it to your main character. And Shadow King. Now I'm fond of this card. This card did not come out in this expansion, but I'm fond of this card because this is one of the last cards that I got to reveal to the community. So is he here just because? So the Proteus's possession works similar to Shadow King's Anchor Host, but is slightly different because possession says would be recruited. Proteus is harder to sneak into play without paying for him. So the distinction they're drawing attention to here is that Shadow King's power triggers when he would appear. So something like Dramatic Entrance or whatever would cause him to try to appear. Proteus is when he would be recruited. Not the biggest fan of how much attention and energy is being put on the recruit appear distinction. I think this was kind of a workaround to the problem of Dramatic Entrance, Pixie, cards that cheat big drops into the game early. They wanted to make it hard. So I get the tension. What the problem here is they want to make big, impactful, crazy late game effects, which I totally understand. Everybody likes big, impactful late game stuff. We want to be able to play with big, crazy cards. But there's so many cards that let you sneak cards into the game early, and ramp is actually pretty strong, that they gated some of these powerful effects like Dark Phoenix, Galactus. They gated these effects behind recruit as opposed to appear, so it prevents you from getting access to them if you sneak the card into play. The problem is I think they become a little too reliant on that crutch, and it's kind of confusing for both new and established players. I've seen players in both categories kind of have to sit back and take a minute and go, wait, what? When does this happen? What is the order of this? It's created a few issues, and again, I get it, but it seems to me like maybe getting rid of Pixie or Araudane Pixie and Dramatic Entrance, maybe changing those cards a little bit would have been a more elegant solution than having to put so much pressure on this kind of strange timing in between. So I go to play a card. Once I attempt to play it, then it attempts to recruit, which causes some things to trigger. Then it actually appears, which causes other things to trigger. And it's creating like a lot of little sub-steps in what is essentially, I'm playing a card. I'm taking a card from my hand, putting it on the table. But it's not, like there's so many sub-steps in that game mechanic that it feels a little convoluted to me at this point. That said, this is the game we're playing with, so that's a fairly minor complaint. Okay, let's run these guys down again real fast here. Elixir, I think you build a deck specifically for his ability to recur cards out of your own KO pile. His ability to kill opposing characters is kind of gravy on top of that, and this guy is not splashable at all and very fragile. So I think if this guy sees play, it's going to be in a deck that's going to want to interact with the graveyard specifically. Vulcan, I think the meta is going to have to shape up very specifically for this guy to see a lot of play. If a Dark Phoenix comes down and calls keywords, this guy is trash. 8 cost 3/3 is not good enough. So his downside, like there's risk to playing this guy, but if you think it's going to be a room full of Human Torches, he could definitely see play. This could be a card that could blow out some decks, but the risk is, I think, significant. Exodus I like a lot. I would have preferred to see his stats swapped. Give me a 6/9, give me higher defense. I want to stick this guy to the board and let him do his thing more than one turn. But even if you pay 8 and you only get each of these effects the one time, that could, in and of itself, close a game out. you could backbreak your opponent, especially if they're low on cards in hand. After the draw phase, oh, you made me throw away my Dark Phoenix. Now I have no answer to this jerk. I think Exodus is great. I think he's going to fit into a lot of decks, and he doesn't have to be in a deck that's built around him. This guy can just be a door closer for any kind of mid-range, and any kind of build you want to put this guy into, unless you need the 8 slot to do something extremely specific for your deck to function, or you need an 8-drop that's, again, fulfilling a specific role. This guy is just a great general use card, other than the glaring deficit of his very tiny booty. Proteus, I like this guy. I like this guy a bunch. I don't think you throw him into any deck, and he definitely has a real significant downside. If this guy doesn't come down until after Dark Phoenix, and even if he does come down, so this superpower is part of the 10-10 and range. So if somebody calls Dark Phoenix, do I lose all of the reality warping since there's like a keyword that grants a superpower within it? I'm not sure how those powers being nested inside each other would necessarily work. My gut is that you would lose the 10-10, but you would keep the superpower, but I need a rules check to be sure about this. I think this card could see play. I like this. I like the idea that he can attach to a main character, make your main character really hard to hit, and give him wound healing that doesn't require playing a specific team. You can just throw this guy in to backstop and prevent losing if you're playing a slower, maybe mid-rangey deck. Seems good. And Shadow King, I got nothing new to say about that guy. So, exciting previews. I really like this Omega arc. I think that there have been some really interesting things. So, as an arc, I'm not super crazy about how they treated Sentinels. I think giving them a wild location would have made sense. I think giving them a little bit more density of drops would have made sense. I think giving them a couple, maybe one more playable main character would have made sense. But the support kit for Sentinels is really strong, and the X-Men that they chose to shoehorn into that expansion, well, shoehorn's not a fair word. They fit the theme of the box. It just feels lame to devote slots to another team when you're introducing a new team. So that's a little bit of my critique on Futures Past. Freedom Force was great. I think there's a lot of cool new things in Freedom Force for Brotherhood. I think there's a lot of playable cards in that box. Maybe not the most exciting playable cards, but definitely stuff that I think is reasonable to see play, and certainly at the kitchen table level. If you're just trying to have fun with your friends, Freedom Force is a terrific box. Finally, Brotherhood has a decent number of pages in the binder to where you could build a cool Brotherhood deck and bounce it off of your opponent's main character. There's another article. So I see in the chat here for Legion next week. Oh, so let's go back a page here. There's another article. And this Omega level box I think is great to kind of just close out my thought there. That I think the ability to... You got a link for that, dude? For this other article? I'm not seeing it here on the Upper Deck page. I think having a box full of 8 drops with the full art is really cool, and to actually make it a little bit more competitive in endgame answers, so it's not just, hey, let's all race to Dark Phoenix. Some of these Omega level cards actually do some cool stuff in terms of counterplay to existing known end of game play. The last part of today's article, Omega's hit stores October 14th. We hope you like this third yet not final look at Omegas. Oh, there you go. Okay, so it's not there's another article out yet. It's we're gonna look at one more character, or is it 18? Oh, I see. So it's a preview of Legion. So we're gonna see Legion. So they will, I guess, maybe spoil this whole box then, which is a little bit of a break from the tradition in terms of how they've been doing a lot of these preview articles, but I'm okay with that. I like being able to open the box and get surprised sometimes. I kind of like the sloppy cell phone pictures of cards that whoever gets the first box is able to take, but I'm also okay with some of the time Upper Deck just giving us everything. So one more character, or is it 18? So surely there's not going to be 18 copies of Legion in the box. Like, just doing the math on the number of slots in the box would foreclose on that. But great arc, great expansion. I think the game's in a good place. I'm going to riff here for a minute. So, nothing to do with these specific preview articles, but we have taken some hits to the game this year. And while overall I think the trajectory of Versus has been very positive throughout COVID times, we've actually seen an increase in membership. We're quite a bit bigger in the Facebook group, a lot more activity. We've had multiple online events this year that have gotten a lot of attention and had an only increasing participant involvement. I think those are all good things. I think as a fan of this game and as somebody who wants this community to thrive and grow, we also shouldn't ignore some of the more negative indicators, like Alliance, which is a huge distributor here in the US, has dropped carrying Versus entirely. Players who are not based in the US are having a great deal of difficulty getting a hold of these sets overseas. Now, some of this is probably COVID related. Some of this might be, it could be a red flag. These could be troubling signs. The fact that it is October 7th and we still have nothing with regard to what the November release is going to be, other than that it's coming and it's an IP we've never heard of, or, well, not never heard of, but that Upper Deck has not specifically mentioned as potentially being an IP. But here we are, we still haven't heard anything. Like, the preview should be starting here, not next week, but the week after that. That's not a good sign. We haven't heard anything about, I don't know, when did we hear about X-Files? Let's see. Let's see when the first X-Files preview was. And X-Files was a special case because I don't know if you guys remember, but James Bond was actually supposed to come out last year. So the first X-Files preview was October 9th. So right about now is when the X-Files preview started. And we know we have at least one more Omega level preview. So it's going to be a couple weeks later before they start the previews for whatever's coming out this November. And X-Files was actually a last-minute replacement for James Bond because there were some rights issues around the James Bond expansion. We also haven't heard really anything about the December release other than that it's going to include a new game mode. I will say that I talked to Mark yesterday, and he referred to the December release as Crossover 3. So there was some folks in the community who heard him talk about how the crossover this year was going to be different than we've seen in the past, and maybe something that we shouldn't expect it to be the same kind of thing. Sort of like a legacy type box with stuff that supports a bunch of different teams. And some people, I think, interpreted that to mean that it wasn't going to be a crossover. Well, it's definitely at least being referred to by Mark as Crossover Volume 3. So whatever is in that box, I can't speak to that, but it is being called a crossover set. I was also told that the cards for 2021 have been planned out. They have a roadmap as far as what sets they're going to release and what characters they're going to feature, and those cards are in development now. So while there are a few troubling indicators out there for the overall health of the game, I think there are, man, that card's so gross looking. I think there are as many, if not more, indicators for the positive indicators for the health of the game. I don't think Versus is going anywhere. I think, yes, I will acknowledge that it's possible that a representative from Upper Deck knows there's problems and is instead being positive and saying, oh, there's nothing to worry about here because they want to keep product moving. I just don't think that's the case here. And maybe I'm being naive, and anybody who wants to lob that accusation my way, feel free. In general, though, I think I have been as harsh, if not harsher, on Upper Deck as pretty much everybody else in the community, except for maybe Stacks. And I don't get the impression that we're being shined on or misled. I think the game is in a good place. I think our community is in a good place, and we're growing. I see every time somebody joins the Facebook collective, me or one of the other people on the mod team has to hit approve to let those people in, and we keep growing. So that's a positive indicator. Alliance has always sucked, so while it's bad news that they dropped this game, I don't think we should cry too heavily over it. They haven't been the most reliable distributor. Now, I will acknowledge a lot of these missed dates that I have laid that at the feet of Upper Deck. And people have said, no, it's not Upper Deck's fault. It's the distributor's fault. So maybe that's true. Maybe we'll find that out. But this year, I don't think has provided us much evidence one way or the other whether Alliance was truly the problem or Upper Deck is the problem as far as hitting release dates. This year has just been crazy. The supply chain has been nuts. So we don't really have good evidence one way or the other on that front. I do think it's valid that retailers and local game shops who are supposed to sell this product have not received solicitations for the November release. We had box art from solicitations for the Omega art months ago. So that is a bad sign, and we can't ignore that, but we also don't know what's causing it. And if it's some kind of legal kerfuffle where, oh, you can't announce this until this date, or it could be tied to who knows what. I don't have a sophisticated enough opinion about rights to various IPs and what other things might be in the works. Like, for instance, if this was Star Wars is notoriously litigious, and they put a lot of restrictions and rules on what can and can't be done with their characters. And it could be that the announcement of whatever this November IP is going to be tied to some other kind of announcement within the Star Wars universe. Again, I don't know anything. I don't know if it's Star Wars, but substitute whatever IP you want there. You know, if it's Overwatch, there have been people talking about how there's this deal with Overwatch where they've been printing collectible cards of professional Overwatch players, and how if Upper Deck is connected to Overwatch in that way, maybe that means we're going to see Overwatch characters in the game, and maybe what they want to do is tie the announcement of Overwatch coming to Versus to something that's happening in Overwatch League. I think they're getting towards the finals now. Maybe I already played. I'm kind of a casual when it comes to Overwatch. So I don't think we should be hitting the panic button. I don't think we should be Chicken Little Lane here and going, oh my gosh, the game's going to be canceled. But I also think we should be honest with ourselves and look at all of the data holistically. And when I do that, for me, my opinion is the game's in a great place. We can't expect a straight, smooth trajectory up. There are going to be some ups and downs. There's going to be some disappointments here and there. Things aren't always going to work out perfectly. And if they did work out perfectly, well, it wouldn't be Versus, right? Right? Like, what's more Versus than going, okay, we didn't tell anybody this expansion's coming out, but you can buy it tomorrow. Well, you can't because we haven't shipped it to your store yet, but it's going to be released tomorrow. Like, that's as Versus as it gets. So I think this arc is great. I think the game's in a healthy place. I'm really excited about what's in store for us. And I guess till next time, go win some games.